Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Invictus Racing League No Assist Championship with myself, Gareth, and of course, ever present, joined by Sab. Good evening, Sab.
Good evening. It's good to be back. Another week here in Invictus. We're back, no assists tonight. It's around Singapore this time. F1 was just recently there. We had quite an interesting race there, which we discussed on the podcast, and it's going to be fascinating tonight to see how these guys got on this week even. Last week we had a great race around Bahrain. We saw White Fountain dominating qualifying, didn't he, with that superb lap right at the end, and then just pretty much run away with in the race as well. He looked untouchable last week, so he'll be hoping to take that form into tonight's race around the streets of Singapore with Boy Better Know, the reigning champion tonight. Can he keep this good run going? If he's, I think he's racing tonight. If he is, he finished second last week, didn't he? And he'll be hoping to keep the pressure on at the top of the table to his teammate FPL Charlie, who's currently leading the championship. So all to play for tonight. And you know what Singapore's like, don't you? One small mistake and you could be out of the race, and a lot of points lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Singapore, the night race in Formula One, and it's a 5 kilometre circuit, 3.1 miles, 13th longest of the calendar. Distance turn one, very short, only 200 metres. That's just over zero point 0.1 of a mile. Longest straight is around 830 metres, and that's on the approach to turn 7. Top speed around here, around 190, 185 miles an hour on the approach to turn 1. That's 305 kilometres. Full throttle, 47% lap, not particularly high, obviously, as it is a street circuit, and the longest period of uninterrupted full throttle is only 9 seconds, so not much time on the throttle pedal for these guys tonight. It's a relatively high fuel consumption track, and the guys have really got to watch out how much they use. ERS around here is relatively low to medium, because obviously there are a lot of heavier braking points for them to harvest some of that energy. Gear changes, though, this is the big one. It's 80 over the lap, and that's over a 50% distance, 4,880, the highest of the season that these guys will be doing.
Yes, sorry, I didn't realise you were stopping there. Yeah, this should be a hell of a challenge, shouldn't it? I haven't had any practice of this week, so I'll be looking to get practice in for it. I hope these guys have got plenty of practice in. I always find the second half of this track quite difficult. There's a lot of slow corners, isn't there? And if you don't get your braking right, you can find yourself running in very deep into these corners, and finding yourself, especially in qualifying, really in trouble then, and you could potentially knock your front wing or really ruin your lap. So it's got to be nailed on all the way through this lap. As you've seen in the real F1 not long back, that long DRS straight early on in the lap can help bring you closer to rivals in the race through DRS, as I say. But yeah, this track, it's not one of my favourites. It is one of my favourites to watch, so I'm looking forward to watching these guys tonight racing around, but it's not definitely one of my favourites to race around. It's very demanding and very tricky, and like I say, you can easily find yourself buried into wall, like we saw not long back with the likes of George Russell and Kimi Räikkönen, who also had a collision with Danny Kvyat. So there's a potential for close racing tonight, but obviously we don't want too close that they get out of the race. But yeah, it's tough to say who's the favourite tonight. White Fountain, if he can find that form, what he shows now and then White Fountain could go really well to that. But Charlie, he's going to want to get back on that podium, isn't he? He just missed out last week. He had a little tangle with Adrian Lockdock, and eventually cost him the chance of a podium. So he'll be wanting to rectify that and solidify the top of the championship, as it looks like the guys are all readying up now in the lobby. So it'll be soon time for us to go into the qualifying. It'll be interesting to see what sort of conditions, the weather conditions, the guys will be facing with. Hopefully for their sake not a wet race, but for our sake, wet qualifying could make it quite interesting. So it'll be interesting to see shortly what they'll be having to challenge with.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and a little bit of weather wouldn't go amiss around here. Makes it just that little bit extra exciting, doesn't it? And yeah, we'll see the guys loading in, and we await what the weather conditions will be for us. And it's one of those tracks, as you were talking about earlier, that it can catch drivers out, and it can be notoriously very difficult, especially on the first lap. Lots of cars in very close quarters, and you go into the tight sort of turn 1 through turn 4, and then equally when you get up to sort of that old Singapore sling around turn 10 through turn 12. And these guys have got to be very careful, because as we look, so I've got a dry qualifying session, so the guys will be absolutely beaming for joy with that one. And yeah, it's one of those tracks as well, like we saw last week, and in stark contrast, obviously Bahrain and Singapore, you wouldn't think they're similar, but they're both hugely aero-critical circuits, and obviously you want to have as much downforce around here as possible to get your car glued to the track surface so you don't run into any of the walls that are either side of you in very, very close detail tonight. So these guys, it's all about setting that car up to its absolute optimum, because any sort of front wing damage around here could really, really ruin someone's race.
Yeah, it could. It's not ideal at all. And I was going to bring up as well that run down to turn 1 when you start in the race, that can also be crucial, because if you do trip up over anybody and damage your front wing, like you say, it's a very long race. Then if you're trying to manage a damaged front wing around here, you suddenly find yourself not attacking the corners like you probably would usually. Turn 1 can cause quite a few issues, as we've seen in F1 in the past as well, when we saw the 2 Ferraris tripping over Max that year. So hopefully none of that happens tonight for these guys, and we see the guys now guys and girls I should say, starting to filter out now. Funny to notice at the moment, most, again, like last week, are all favouring the harder tyre. At the moment, most are looking at the hard tyre, with FPL Charlie still sat in the pit lane at the minute. Oh, he's changed to a hard tyre. So at the moment, there's only 3 people favouring the soft tyre, with everybody else favouring the hard tyre at the moment. So it looks like people just don't like those soft tyres around here.
Yeah, looking to possibly do a first banker lap on those hard tyres and get quicker and quicker. Of course, we've got 18 minutes in the session. We're now down to 16. We're on board with Burmeister in the racing point. He's the first one out on track, weaving those tyres side to side, and with being the hardest compound, they do need the most amount of work on that outlap to get the temperature into them that really gets them into that sweet spot as you're about to kick off the lap, and he's coming around to the final sector of the lap and into now the underneath the stands at turn 18, and this is a corner here that can catch out several drivers, especially if braking around here. So watch out for plumes of tyre smoke coming from the front and left or right of the cars as the guys lock up. Of course, not running any assist, so no ABS, no braking assist on tonight for these guys, and we'll see what Burmeister can do on his opening lap. And we spoke to him earlier in the week, and he's looking forward to this one, and he said although it's not one of his favourites, it's definitely a test and a challenge, so he's hoping to get himself within the at least the top 10, if not up to a top 5 position. So Burmeister, he was in the points for the first time last week. We'll see what we can do this week.
Yeah, I think, to be fair to Burmeister, I think he's had a solid start to his career in no assist. Obviously, his teammate Harry has kind of shown him up a little bit with that debut win, but to be fair to Burmeister, he's come in, he's settled down, and last week he had a decent race, didn't he? Like you say, he's picked up his first points of the season, and if he can keep that consistency up and keep scoring regular points, he should go well in this league eventually. It's a good promising start for him in the racing point, with his teammate also Harry in the racing point, as we start to see now some guys starting to get their laps underway for the first time. The only guy out there at the moment is Dragio on the soft tyre, so expect him to be much faster than the hard running guys, as long as he keeps it clean around here on his first flying lap.
Burmeister now coming up to turn 15 and 16. He's currently on that first flying lap, so he'll be the benchmark for everyone else. So it looks like everyone apart from White Fountain. Of course, didn't come out until late in the session last week, so White Fountain possibly waiting for this track to rubber in a little bit and just evolve ever so slightly. It's very green at the moment, so Burmeister will be the first one laying down some rubber on the track. He's coming around the final 2 corners now, sweeps around those left-handers, goes across the line, and it's a 1:47 for the Racing Point driver, and he is the first time lap immediately beaten by 0.3 of a second by our reigning champion Scott Boyben and OSB.
Yes, that's a good lap there from Scott. I'm just riding on board with Jojo at the moment. He's coming towards the end of lap 9. I have to say, these cars look absolutely fantastic, don't they, on this game at night, lit up with the light shining on the cars as Jojo has given up on his soft tyre run, so clearly he must have made a mistake somewhere through that lap. He's given up on those soft tyres, so no soft time set from him as Meg Luppy there goes fastest so far with a 1:39.3, so the lap time's fast tumbling down, so it'll be interesting to see, as you say, as the track rubbers in, to see if these guys can get it into the 1:38s and even lower, as we now see White Fountain, who left it late last week. He's now out on track. He's also favouring the hard tyre.
Just on board with FPL Charlie, the current championship leader, leading by 5 points to his teammate Scott. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Mercedes do with strategy in this race, and equally, will they be allowed to race each other? Because at some point, something's got to happen between the two. What does Charlie do? He goes up onto provisional pole. It's a 38.9. He's the first one into the 38. NJ Coupe retiring on his flying lap there. So it looks like he must have collected the wall at sector 2 at some point. So we've got a yellow flag, and we'll see if that's going to have hampered anyone's fast laps at the moment. It looks as if everyone else has set a time apart from White Fountain, who's out on his out lap at the moment. So everyone else having set a time. You've got FPL Charlie through to Andrew Lockdock in 1st through 8th, and then White Fountain, who's on that out lap now. Belgian helmet, or Belgian flag colours, adorning that helmet, the red, the yellow and the black, and he'll come through. And of course, he's sitting on the most amount of race wins so far this season, White Fountain. And we said in the interviews after the race last week, is that he does have those very high highs, and he said himself, if he either has a great race or he has a not particularly good one at all. So it's really consistency that's cost him in this championship, because with the wins so far, he should be challenging right up there.
He should, and if he'd had some less bad lows, I should say, or low lows, like he said in the commentary, and he was picking up, say, a 5th or 4th, or even sneak onto the podium with those, he would be running away with this championship, wouldn't he, really? He has just been slightly inconsistent. When, like you say, when he is fast, he's really fast. I'm right on board with a minute. There's a yellow flag ahead of him. Not sure what it's about. Maybe a slow-running car at the moment. But it's White Fountain just into sector 2 now. He's got a car ahead of him. It looks like it's a Toro Rosso, so hopefully that car doesn't hinder him too much, as he's just coming round now to that. He's run really deep there, the Toro Rosso. Oh no, sorry, I apologise. It's a Racing Point of Burmeister. He nicely gets out of the way there of White Fountain, as he's now heading down into sector 3. Can White Fountain put the pressure on Charlie and set the benchmark once again like he did last week?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a scrappy lap for White Fountain. He's missed a couple of apexes so far, so we'll see what he does on this first lap, and obviously maybe not enjoying these hard compound tyres as much as everyone else has, and we'll see what he can do up against Charlie. Of course, Charlie currently sitting on that 38.9. White Fountain now coming up to the final 2 corners of the lap. What can he do in the Renault? He's going to come across the line. It's going to be top, and what do we know? Wow. He takes provisional pole by 9 thousandths of a second there. So a great lap from White Fountain, and if that looks like a scruffy lap, I can't wait to see what he does when he really locks it in.
As Meg Luppy has just gone even quicker, a 1:38.897. So White Fountain with the scruffy lap, similar to what Charles Leclerc did in Formula 1 not too long ago, where his lap looked very scruffy, but he managed to put it on the fast left. But Meg Luppy, he seems to be on it tonight, doesn't he, Meg? He was up there early on with his first flying lap, and he's gone again with a 1:38.8 now. So Meg Luppy in the Red Bull so far, looking pretty fast.
Yeah, that was a really decent lap from Meg, and he'll be looking at picking up a decent result tonight after, unfortunately, a little bit of a shocker that he had last week around Bahrain and wasn't enjoying it whatsoever. So, yeah, great lap from the Red Bull driver, puts himself up on provisional pole at the moment. It's going to be a hard task for those guys on the hard tyres to get against, but you've now got guys starting to come out on the medium, so they've gone down one scale from the hard to the medium compound. So Scott now on his out lap, about to start his flying lap. He's on the yellow wall medium tyres. What can he do? And he, of course, will hoping to be getting ahead of Charlie, because with an equally white fountain, with those two second and third at the moment, they are the top three in the championship, and it looks like Scott is going to be the first one out there to set that time on the medium tyres and say, you know what, guys, come after me, chase down this time, and we'll see if anyone can get any closer to him. And it's actually it's looking down through the field. We've got Dragio and Speed Queen yet to set a lap. Dragio, of course, back out there on the softs again, so he's still going for that fastest lap time and trying to get himself towards the front end of the grid and you know what, try and stretch a bit of a lead out at the start of the race, and hopefully possibly a little bit of chaos happens behind him and he can build a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, and unlike all the tracks around here, if track position is a lot better and a lot more advantageous, isn't it? So if he can get himself right at the top and then stretch that tyre out, like you say, maybe keep the guys on the slower tyres behind for as long as possible. Who knows? He could just keep that lead or keep the wherever he is up there, and he could score good points going for this alternative strategy to what everybody else is thinking about at the moment. It's a bit of a scruffy lap for him at the moment, though. He's struggled to hit a few, and he's come straight back in again, so he's really not enjoying life at the minute on those soft tyres, as he's yet to still set a time on the soft tyres, and he's back into the pit lane.
And there you go, Scott goes top of the pile. It's a 37.9, great lap there, and that is the first real punchy lap that we've seen from any of the top three, and we'll see if they can come back in. Charlie and Harry is out there, and Harry, of course, we can't rule him out because he is, of course, a race winner, won on his debut in China a few races ago. So Harry's sitting in 5th position at the moment, and equally we've looked down through the field and there's several other drivers that have done particularly well. M. Doran, of course, has picked up a couple of podiums so far this season. Adri Lockdock had a wonderful race last week, unfortunately missed out on a decent podium after picking up a late penalty. And Speed Queen down in 11th at the moment, and Speed Queen, it's actually she's breaking a few records tonight. It's her 57th no assist start, so no assist league start for tonight, and she actually breaks the record for the most consecutive no assist league starts. This is her 34th, so congratulations Speed Queen. She's once again putting her name at the top of another one of our record tables.
Yeah, she's used to sitting high up on the top of it. Charlie, 1:36.7. Wow. Now that is a lap time from Charlie. He has absolutely smashed his teammate there. Boy better know Scott. Wow, that is a benchmark if I've ever seen one from Charlie. He's definitely putting down the gauntlet tonight in that Mercedes.
Harry up into 2nd position as well. The racing point goes to 36.9, so 0.2 of a second away from Charlie. But yeah, Charlie really puts down a statement lap there, and that's really blown Scott out the water with that one. And we're on board. We've got a yellow in sector 2, but we're on board with M. Doran in the McLaren, currently sitting on a 39.7. What will he do on this? His 2nd lap, and he's going to come across the line. It's going to move him up. It does move him up onto 2nd row of the grid. It's 3rd position, a 37.5.
So it just shows that there is work to be done there then for Scott, doesn't there? Because it did look like it was a decent time at first, but this track, like you say, is now really rubbering in, and Charlie setting the benchmark at the moment. Still, though, we've not had Dragio or Speed Queen set any times in it. Dragio, I think, has just completely given up with those soft tyres, and he's now back out. He's now on the medium tyre with Speed Queen. She just given up on her run, unfortunately for her, on the medium tyre, and she's back into the pit lane tonight. Her teammate, CPI Alex, unfortunately isn't here tonight, which is a shame for him because he's been going so well in the championship. So people around him will be able to make gains on him this season. As I see, is looking now, Speed Queen looks like she's going to be heading out shortly on a set of softs.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are missing a few drivers from the race tonight due to a few external problems and holidays. I believe that we've got the likes of Humbo Stone and CPI Alex that should be rejoining us, and the likes of Zyman and Scopefield are both missing as well. So two big misses from the Scandinavian Isles over there, as we've got the two Swedes missing out tonight. So we'll see if we're on board with JJ on his outlap at the moment. As you said, he's decided against those red-walled soft tyres onto the yellow-walled mediums. What's he going to do? He's just slowed down, just winding up, giving himself a bit of room with knowing a car was up ahead, but it looks like the Racing Point has just bailed into the pit lanes now, so it's a fresh track in front of JGO. Out on the mediums, can he get himself up into the top 10? He's going to go deep there at turn 3 and almost rubbing up against the wall, so a bit of a desperate start to the lap for himself, and now DRS wide open as he stretches up from turn 5 through this tiny kink at turn 6 all the way up to the braking point at turn 7, and breaking down into third gear, kick it back up and just runs out nicely, riding that red and white striped curb. And now it's a series of almost 90-degree turns, and it feels like it really slows the car down. Now you've got to shoot it down through turn 10, what used to be the old Singapore Sling, and we've got rain falling on the track. I'm not sure if you've picked this one up as well, Sab, but I've got rain on the second sector at the moment, so everyone looking like they've gone for the medium tyres, and this is really gonna, you can see Dragio looks like he's decided to bail out of this one as well, so the rain coming down, he's going to be losing a whole lot of traction out there on those dry tyres.
I just noticed that, and I was about to pick up on that as well. As you said, I was riding on board with Speed Queen because I was thinking she's on the soft tyre. Can she really get up amongst those front-running positions? But with the rain coming down now, is it going to be too wet for her? She's going to give it a go. She's not bailing on it. Can these soft tyres give her the grip on this ever increasing damp track as she's now entering into turn 1? This track obviously going to get wetter and wetter, so she's got it all to do here on these soft tyres to set a time. Otherwise, if it's too wet, she's going to end up finding herself starting at the back of the grid, which she definitely doesn't want. So she now starts her new flying lap, heading down into sector 1 now. Can she keep it on track, and can she get a time underway to be able to make it representative and up there with the others? As it looks like to me, yes, I think it's with 1:10 coming up on the clock, the front 4 are not coming out, so they aren't fancying these wet conditions.
No, so Speed Queen throwing everything at this lap, trying to get herself into the top 10, and you can see there the rain coming down. You can see it getting particularly slick as we get towards the almost hairpin light turn there at turn 13. Now stretch it up, and DRS is still available, but it looks like we've got Speed Queen coming around towards the corner now, getting, you can see just a lot slower than what we've seen from some of the other guys. So we'll see what she can do over this final few corners, and the rain not as heavy here in the third sector, and just a dripping, so not as much as we saw in the second sector. We saw obviously a little bit of slickness on the tyres, on the track surface, with the glint of the 1600 loop or 1600 floodlights around the track, and she bails out of it. So Speed Queen is going to end this session without a lap time, and with 12 seconds left to go, and only a few cars out on track, as the likes of White Fountain, who looks like he's White Fountain there, he's 0.3 of a second slower, so it doesn't look like he's going to improve. Checkered flag is now out on the session, and White Fountain the only one out there, but it doesn't look like he's going to go any quicker. He's slowed right down, paced off, so there you go. FPL Charlie is your pole sitter with Harry alongside him. M. Doran and Boy Better Know make it a second row appearance for themselves, and Meg Luppy with a welcome return to the top 5, and those guys got the laps in before the rain came.
It was such a shame, wasn't it? I was absolutely gutted when I saw those few raindrops on the camera of Speed Queen. I thought we might just be able to just see it out for the last few. It's a shame how qualifying ended like that, because I was hoping to see if anybody could challenge Charlie. Obviously, Charlie's not going to be disappointed. He'll be delighted, won't he? He gets to stay on the front row of the grid, pole position man. So yeah, it's just a shame, isn't it, that it ended like that? But all to play for coming up now with unfortunately 3 guys at the back unable to set a time.
Yeah, so White Fountain will be the only one on the hard tyres for the race. Everyone else has decided to go for the mediums, and then of course Dragio, Speed Queen and MJ Coupe were unfortunately unable to set a time. Dragio trying his hardest, and equally Speed Queen just leaving it a fraction too late, and she couldn't get out there and set a competitive time on those soft tyres as the rain started to fall. And unfortunately we lost MJ Coupe early in the session after what looked like contact with the wall. So yeah, great qualifying lap there from Charlie, a 36.7, just under 1.5 tenths away from Harry. Harry really putting himself back up into the conversation, and Harry was another one we spoke to earlier in the week, and he's taking the end of the season. He's obviously joined halfway through the season. He's taking the end of the season sort of in his stride. He's not particularly worried about having to interject himself into a fight, obviously knowing that there's going to be guys around him fighting for a championship. And he said that there's no pressure on him whatsoever, and that he can take as many risks as he wants, knowing that Charlie and Scott and White Fountain, they might have to be a little bit more cautious. So I think we might see a little bit of a feisty Harry starting off the line.
Yeah, that's the advantage, isn't it, for Harry, who joins later into the season. He can, like you say, take those risks, can't he? And maybe go for a dive down the inside that you probably wouldn't necessarily go for if you're in a championship fight. Harry, as we briefly mentioned earlier, he started off his new season in his new league very well with that debut win, as we say, and once again he's alongside his good friend Charlie at the front end of the grid. It'd be interesting to see, will Charlie and Harry go toe to toe into the first corner, or will Charlie just back out of it a little bit and not risk a potential damage to the front wing or puncture or anything like that? Because if something like that were to happen to Charlie, it could cost him dear, and in big championship stakes like it is, any sort of DNF or drop down the order now could really cost him and hurt him in this championship battle.
Yeah, and it's going to be a fascinating start to the Grand Prix. As you can see, they're about to leave for the formation lap, and you've got Charlie, of course, leading the field away with Harry in second, Doran in third, with Boy Ben No in fourth, Meg Lupke in fifth, Adri Lockdock in sixth, with White Fountain in seventh. Nick L.J. Thompson is in 8th, with Burmeister in 9th. Dragio, Speed Queen and MJ Coupe are outside of the top 10. We'll see what everyone is starting on. You can see there it is the hard tyres, of course, White Fountain, who qualified on those tyres. But outside of the top 10, Dragio and MJ Coupe have decided to go for the hardest rubber. Speed Queen deciding to go for a fresh set of the medium tyres. And apart from that, everyone else there on the medium rubber. And this will be interesting because we'll see, do we get that sort of rain shower that we saw at the end of qualifying? Will it come into play later this evening? And there's plenty of can see everyone else there on the medium tyres, and Charlie building up a bit of a lead, having to slow down there to try and let everyone catch back up. And yeah, it's I'm sure the nerves will be building in the Mercedes team, as Scott knowing that he's going to make progress forward, because he won't want to let his teammate get away, because of course Charlie leading the championship by 5 points, and they always say that drivers lose around 4 kilos in the Singapore Grand Prix. I'm pretty sure that half our drivers wouldn't mind losing 4 kilos or so, but it's it's going to be a real testy one for these guys tonight. It's the longest. It feels like one of the longest tracks of the season. It's up there with Spa with the longest lap time. 23 corners, 14 left, 9 right, and that lap time does bounce up quite high, and especially if you start to get rain, it'll be getting up towards the 2-minute mark. So these guys, as you can see there, Charlie really pushing the rear end of that car through the chicane there at turn 16 and 17. So these guys, it's all about concentration, isn't it, tonight? It's all about keeping your eye on what's in front of you and keeping it away from the 2 walls on either side.
Definitely. For me, I would not like to be starting in the middle of that pack tonight, because you only have to have somebody slightly brake too early or go in a bit too late behind you, and suddenly you could be caught up and tripped over quite easily into first 2-3 corners, and you could suddenly find yourself with a damaged front wing or facing the wrong way or anything like that. So it's going to be tricky, especially for that midfield battle, as we saw a completely different track, I know, but as we saw in Russia yesterday with Roman Grosjean getting caught out with that battle with Giovinazzi. So yeah, all to play for here, especially at the front and in the midfield.
And here they are, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause, out, go. Right, it's a great start there from Harry. He's got a good bit of traction off the line. Can he take the inside line down into turn one? Is Charlie going to sweep around? No, it is, but we've got contact behind between what looks like Meg Lugby, who was spun out, but it is Harry that takes the lead with Charlie into second. Scott has moved up into third position. White Fountain moving up, and with Nico J. Thompson, but Harry collecting the wall there on the outside, and Charlie's going to try and stay with him. And if he didn't collect the wall, he was really rubbing himself up against it. But we'll see, can Charlie get into the toe of the Racing Point down towards turn 7 for the first time? But no, it is Harry that gets the best getaway and up into the lead. And now with Charlie in second position, Scott looking at the back end of his teammate. That's a great start from Scott. He'll be glad to get himself up behind Charlie, where he can just keep an eye on him. But Charlie now looking to the inside of Harry, going up towards the old Singapore sling, and they're not really an overtaking position here. So we'll look to see if he can stay with him for the rest of the lap. But great start from Harry, up from second into the lead.
Great start as well for White Fountain, Nick and Speed Queen. They've all jumped up 3 places from the start. Superb start for Nick, I'd say. He's on the tail of White Fountain, last week's race winner. He's not far behind Boy Better Know as well. So if Nick can keep it good going tonight, there's opportunities to fight for a potential podium there, because he can see the back of the Mercedes of Scott. So if he can stick along with White Fountain for now and keep within this battle, there's opportunities there to fight later on for good points.
Yeah, we've got a close battle going on between several drivers back through the field. Got M. Doran sticking tightly with Nick L.J. Thompson. Speed Queen is on the rear end of Adria Lockdock, but as we complete the first lap, Harry comes across the line and he's got Charlie right for company. Will Charlie look to the inside? But no, he decides against it, and we've seen before not particularly many overtaking positions around here. You're going to have to use DRS, but that look into turn 1 has cost him a little bit of time, and it's allowed Scott just to cruise up to the back end of him ever so slightly. So Scott's going to be right in the toe of his teammate here. So this is where we're going to see what happens between the two Mercs. They're fighting for the championship. Their teammates, they're fighting for 2 championships, one as a team, one as separate drivers. What one's going to come first? I imagine with the reigning champion sitting in third position, looking at the current leader of the championship, that he's not going to care a thing about that Mercedes Constructors Championship. Scott's going to want to get past Charlie.
It's close everywhere during the race so far. Nick, he's starting to fall slightly back from White Fountain now, and he's creating a bit of a train. He's got M. Doran very close behind in his McLaren with Adria Lockdock, last week's so close podium winner, and Speed Queen, who's also on the hot tail of that Toro Rosso. So at the moment we've got a good battle on at the minute for 5th place all the way down to 8th place.
Yeah, and it's close quarters, and we can expect that for the good few laps, as these guys will get DRS in the next lap or so. So it means that they will be able to stay with each other's. White Fountain looks like he's gone deep there into turn 16, so that's going to allow Nick L.J. Thompson to get even closer and equally drag M. Doran behind. And then you've still got that battle between Speed Queen and Adria Lockdock, and behind Burmeister and MJ Cooper around a second behind those guys. So it's been a good start here for the Mercedes team, as Harry goes even faster, sets that first flying lap of 1:41.5. So good lap from Harry. He stretched out 7/10 of a second lead over Charlie, and the gap between the two Mercedes has stabilised a little bit here. It's back to 0.8 of a second between Scott and Charlie, and DRS will be enabled. So we'll see what these guys can do with that first toe all the way up from turn 5 through to turn 7. DRS wide open for Charlie. What can he do coming up against Harry? Doesn't look like he's been close enough this lap, but he's nicely in that gap and that little window of 1 second between himself and Harry, and you probably need to be around 3 to 4 tenths of a second behind. So Charlie possibly just needs a lap or two just to calm himself down, get into the rhythm, and then start attacking.
Superb battle here between M. Doran and Nick LJ Thompson. They have swapped positions twice. M. Doran got the move done early into this lap. Nick coming back at him, but M. Doran managed to keep it down the inside of Nick LJ Thompson. Nick LJ Thompson had to get out of it and allow M. Doran through. And we also had Speed Queen just behind Nick. She's got past Adri Lockdock now and hot on the tail of Nick now. So all happening in 5th down to 8th at the moment. A really good battle in the midfield. I just wanted to point out as well, White Fountain is the highest running hard tyre at the moment. He's up there in 4th, so that's probably why he's a little bit off the pace of the top 3 at the moment, but he should come good later on the race when he has the softer rubber at the end.
Nick LJ Thompson now starting to come under threat from Speed Queen. Of course, she's on fresh rubber as Harry sets another fastest up of 49.2 there in the racing points. So Speed Queen now, she's going to start attacking the Haas in front. Will she make a move down to 2-1? DRS open for the number 58 driver, and she's not able to send it down the inside. Not quite close enough here. We sit on the rear wing of that Ferrari as we follow in. You can see just how close she is behind Nick here, and does she go to the inside down? Or she thinks better of it, and it's better to stick in the DRS of Nick now, but Nick himself has DRS on M. Doran ahead, so Speed Queen might find that advantage slightly negated by the fact that Nick equally got closer up to the back end of M. Doran, who's fallen back a little bit from White Fountain. It's 1.3 seconds now as gaps are starting to form between the top 3. You can see there's a 1.5 second gap between Harry and Charlie, 1.2 now, 1.3 seconds between Charlie and Scott.
Yeah, like you say, gaps are forming. White Fountain now 3.5 seconds behind the front 3. He'll not want that gap to be increased too much. He'll want to try and keep on that top 3 for as long as possible, and then when it comes to him moving on to, I assume, the medium tyre, he should be then really on the case for a podium finish. Great battle, like I keep mentioning it here between Nick, M. Doran, Speed Queen. Adri Lockdock, unfortunately, now is just dropping back slightly from this battle. He's 1.3 seconds behind Speed Queen, so unfortunately he's starting to fall back into the clutches of Burmeister, who's doing all right at the moment. He's running in 9th place in his racing point.
Speed Queen trying to do all she can to pressure Nick into a mistake around here, so Nick will have his mirrors full of that scarlet red Ferrari as he goes around to complete this 5th lap and goes on to lap 6. And now DRS wide open for Speed Queen. Can she send it down the inside? It's quite a high speed corner with a heavy braking or medium heavy braking zone there, so the apex does pinch on you, so it's very hard to get that move done, as it looks like Adri Lockdock went slightly wide there into turn 3, so that's going to cost him a little bit more time. But as JJ picks up 5 seconds speeding in the pit lane, so he's coming into the pits. He's the second person to pick up a penalty after 3 seconds were awarded to MJ Coupe on the previous lap, and with DRS, Speed Queen still unable to get past Nick, as Nick's still sitting right in the gearbox of M. Doran in a McLaren.
M. Doran's defending well here. I've been watching him for a few laps since he's got ahead of Nick, and he's just getting the job done to nullify that DRS effect from Nick behind, and he's managing to keep that McLaren ahead at the moment. With, you would imagine, during the DRS zones, Nick should be able to cruise right up and have the opportunity to get the move done on M. Doran. But M. Doran at the minute is defending nicely. He's pulling out a big enough gap so that DRS doesn't quite work for Nick, and it's that then is frustrating Speed Queen, who's also getting it's DRS but unable to do anything on Nick because Nick is also running the DRS. So it's it's falling backwards and backwards into Adulokdok, who's slowly starting to catch this group up again. So he must have had a few scuffy laps earlier on, but Adulokdok slowly started to reel himself back into this contention for 5th place.
You can see the red lights blinking on the rear wing of Nick L.J. Thompson as he harvests the energy that will be powering that battery. But Speed Queen has got a better launch out of the last corner down into turn 1. They're going to go side by side. Nick and Speed Queen come into contact, side pod to front right there, and Nick has to take to the escape road, but Speed Queen up into 6th position. She manages to get past Nick. Nick there, he was just saving a little bit of battery and just recuperating over the end of the last lap, and it meant that Speed Queen was able to catch right up to him, as obviously he was slightly underpowered compared to the Ferrari, who was pushing for all she was worth, and Nick there running out wide, and that's going to cost him there, because obviously getting out onto the marbles won't be too bad early in the race, but Speed Queen, that releases her up into 6th, and she can now chase down after M. Doran.
This is the Speed Queen we love to commentate on and watch, isn't it? She started on the back row. She's up 5 places now into 6th. She's looking very racy tonight, isn't she? She'll now be setting her sights firmly on M. Doran, who that really helped him, didn't it, with the battle between Nick and it was Adulokdok. I was just watching in the background there. Adulokdok, who was catching up to the back of Nick L.J. Thompson, got all out of shape there coming out of the corner, and luckily he managed to hold on to the car and could keep on the tail of Nick. But like I say, M. Doran, he got a bit of an advantage with Speed Queen Nick having that little tussle down into turn 1, but Speed Queen now starting to reel M. Doran in just around a second, so soon she'll be able to pick up that DRS, and it'll be interesting to see if M. Doran will be able to defend against her.
Now, in your wise opinion, Sab, as we look through, as JJ picks up 3 seconds, Harry's now sitting on a 2.3 second lead, Scott 3 seconds behind. We've seen how powerful the undercut can work around here. If you were in the Mercedes position, would you box and possibly change a strategy, maybe even go to a completely different one, just to try and catch out Harry? Because although we know Charlie and Scott are fighting for the championship, and they will quite happily be consistent as long as they can come home and pick up points. Charlie, as long as he can finish ahead of Scott. But of course, these guys are racers; they want to win. So, do either Mercedes look at possibly changing up that strategy?
It would be a good gamble, wouldn't it? I definitely, if I was one of them, definitely give it a go. It proved it works. The undercut, from what we've seen on TV, Charlie, who's been hovering, hasn't he, around 2.5 seconds now. It would definitely give Harry something to think about if FPL Charlie decided to pit 1-2 laps earlier than they anticipates, just to get onto that fresh set of tyres and try and get the outlaps nailed. But the problem is for Charlie is he doesn't want to pit too soon and come out into traffic, because then that ruins everything for him. So it's a delicate balance, isn't it? You've got to be able to pick your moments of when's best to come in, because if you get that pit stop slightly wrong, you could suddenly find yourself in the middle of a battle what you don't really want to be in, and suddenly you could go from challenging from 1st place to challenging 3rd and 4th, and it could really hamper you. So it's really tough for them out there to try and decide what to do. I'm not envious of these guys for when it comes to me racing tomorrow and Wednesday, what decisions to make, as boy better know Scott, that could prove costly, couldn't it? He's picked up a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings.
Yeah, that's unlike Scott. We don't often see him pick up track extending penalties like that. And we're just on board here with Speed Queen, who's sitting behind M. Doran. M. Doran equally right on the tail of White Fountain now. So White Fountain obviously on those hard tyres, and the 2 guys behind on M. Doran on scrubbed mediums, and Speed Queen on fresh mediums. So both of those guys will have the tyre advantage for at least a few more laps. But Speed Queen just having to probably frustratingly sit behind these guys, knowing that she could probably go a lot faster than what she is. And you can see now Scott really starting to fall away from the likes of Charlie and Harry. So it's not particularly, I mean, White Fountain, he's not really keeping in touch with Scott himself. So Scott kind of in a little bit of no man's land at the moment.
He is, and as you talk about White Fountain is under massive pressure now for 4th place. M. Doran has caught up to the back of White Fountain and dragged along with him Speed Queen. So suddenly Speed Queen is tasting a chance for a potential 4th place or even higher if Scott starts to fall any further back. So at the moment there is all to play for at the moment. As I'm riding on board with Speed Queen, you can see Scott in the distance. Then you've got White Fountain, then M. Doran. There is huge potential here to pick up great points now, and even potential podium. So all to play for now for these guys from 3rd down to 6th.
Yeah, Speed Queen, as you were saying, looking very pacey tonight, and strange to see that she didn't come out in qualifying, that maybe she did think that starting on fresh tyres was the way to go, which is why she left it so late in the session. But yeah, well, I can say that Scott was in no man's land. He's actually losing time hand upon fist at the moment now. That gap was 2.5 seconds. It's now just over 1.5 between himself and White Fountain now. So something possibly going wrong with Scott. Has he collected the wart somewhere? Has he lost an end plate? Is something possibly hampering his pace? Because he's really starting to fall off the back of his teammate Charlie. And Charlie equally just over 3 seconds away from Harry. So Harry now in that magical 3-second window. So if he did pick up a penalty, he would still have the advantage over Charlie. But yeah, Scott really starting to fall back, especially into the clutches of White Fountain in this trailing 2 of M. Doran and Speed Queen behind.
Just been looking at Scott, as you asked about whether he's picked up any wing damage. From what I can see, it doesn't look like he has any wing damage at all. There doesn't seem to be any end plates missing. So whether it's just a case of he's took too much tyre life out of those tyres too soon, I don't know, or he's just struggling at this stage. But as you can see now, White Fountain is just 0.8 of a second behind the Mercedes, and he is pulling a heck of a train along with him. So Scott suddenly could find himself from 3rd challenging all the way down to 6th. So this is crucial moment for Scott now. He's going to have to get all these tools out of his shed, isn't he, and try and defend against all these guys who are coming up fast behind him now with DRS, as well as Adri Lockdock in the Toro Rosso pits, as well as Burmeister down in 8th and 9th.
Speed Queen there, just sending it to the inside and just letting M. Doran know that she's there. But yeah, there you go. It is DRS for all 3 cars there. It's a mega toe from Speed Queen there. She's going to try and go around to the outside of M. Doran. M. Doran just shutting the door and saying, "Not yet. Don't worry. I'm still here." So she's going to go to the inside, and there's a little bit of contact between the two. And in fact, M. Doran's put her around, and is she going to be able to get it? She has managed to J-turn the Ferrari there. It's going to come out right in front of Nick L.J. Thompson. So he, in fact, I believe that just worrying that he was going to run into the back of her, Nick actually slammed on the brakes and he's managed to put it into the wall there. So caught out by M. Doran. Unfortunately, it was a little bit of a George Russell, Romain Grosjean, exactly the same corner there, whereas and it was just pinning Speed Queen up against the wall. M. Doran and Speed Queen, unfortunately, coming to blows, and that's really hurt Speed Queen. She's now dropped 4 seconds down off of the back of M. Doran, and unfortunately for M. Doran, she's a little bit like the Hulk. You will not like her when she's angry, and I expect to see her charging back as fast as we've seen her so far this race.
Yeah, and I don't know if you picked up on it, White Fountain has now picked up a 3-second time post for multiple ones. He's trying everything possible to get past that Mercedes of Scott. He's diving all around, trying to put him off, and unfortunately, it's picked him up a penalty. Now, Scott is going to be under big pressure now. White Fountain quite close here, going through turn 3, coming up to the first DRS zone of the laps. Scott's going to have to get good traction, good pull away from the corner. He does seem to be getting a gap, but White Fountain now with DRS is gaining, but it's not going to be close enough. And Scott at the moment is defending nicely from White Fountain, but look at the gap now to his teammate. It's over 8 seconds to Charlie. So at the moment, unfortunately for Scott, it's a case of damage limitation, isn't it? Can he keep hold of that third place and potential podium, just to keep good points from this race. But White Fountain on the harder tyre, remember, is looking very racy now. Those tyres really coming into their own, as potentially the medium tyre, Scott's starting to fall away. White Fountain really in his element now on the harder tyre.
Yeah, I think Scott's just taken so much life out of those tyres. You can see that the rear end isn't going down when he wants it to, and equally when he's accelerating out corners, the back end of the car is getting all out of shape, and so those tyres are obviously coming towards the end of their life. We've done 11 laps on them so far, but he is probably holding up White Fountain now. Of course, started on the hard tyres, so we'll have that little bit extra tyre life, and you can see the gap that it's now Scott is holding up White Fountain, as we've got Harry pitting from the lead, so with a yellow in sector 2 as well. So Harry has decided to cover off that undercut, so I'm surprised that these two Mercedes have stayed out.
The yellow flag was for Adri Lotdock, unfortunately. He down where the old Singapore Sling used to be. He just lost it, unfortunately, for Adri, and he's got significant damage to his front wing, and he's dropped right down into 10th place. He's only just pitted, remember, so unfortunately for Adri Lotdock, he's going to have to pit again, and that's obviously going to drop him further down. But yes, like you say,
here comes White Fountain. So yeah, here comes White Fountain down the inside of Scott. Will Scott try and fight him off? He's going to try and stay to the underside. There's wheel-to-wheel contact between the two, and it just about puts White Fountain off. And White Fountain, in fact, clips the wall, and that's the front left end plate gone off that Renault. And that's going to really cost him now, because he's going to really struggle on that sort of turn in for the left-hand corners. And you can see there, yeah, missing the apex there, and White Fountain, he's going to really struggle now into the braking points, and M. Doran has closed right up to the back of these guys as Scott was holding up White Fountain. There was wheel-to-wheel contact between the two as they tried to go side by side through turn 9, and unfortunately for White Fountain there, he just ran out wide on the next corner, clipped the wall, lost a little bit of that front wing. That's allowed M. Doran to close up, but then unfortunately for M. Doran, he's going to be looking at his wing and thinking, oh no, and here comes Speed Queen. She's already caught up those 2.5 seconds that she'd lost back to M. Doran, and she's going to be on an absolute warpath for the next few laps.
So what would you say? Would you say that is a little... would you find that frustrating on behalf of White Fountain? Because as you see, Scott is pitting. White Fountain, he come across as just impatient, wouldn't you say? Because he was on the harder tyre. All he had to do was just stay with Scott. Scott was obviously going to come in at some point. White Fountain then would take the lead of the race and then see out. But now this has really hampered his chances of pushing on now with that damaged front wing of Speed Queen. Now is chasing down. So would you just say that's just a bit of what would you say, frustration and a bit of impatience from White Fountain?
Well, White Fountain, of course, still in the championship fight and probably thinking, you know what, Scott, he's the man, he's the reigning champion, and he's equally a guy that I need to overtake in the championship. I want to get past him. So, yeah, perhaps a little bit of desperation from the Belgian to try and clear him quickly as Harry comes back out of using that one lap undercut, extends that lead even further. It's now 5.2 seconds between himself and Charlie, 11 seconds between himself and Scott. So we've got White Fountain leading at the moment. Speed Queen's in second. Those two yet to stop. Of course, Speed Queen started on fresh mediums. White Fountain started on used hards, and he's running now with a slightly damaged front wing, so that will be costing him a lot of time, but I'm sure he won't be happy about. But M. Doran, he's 0.8 of a second behind Scott, so that battle between those two looks like it's gonna heat up a little bit more after Scott was losing time earlier. But on fresh rubber now, can he improve? Can he get a little bit faster? Because we could see that he was really starting to struggle towards the end of that end of first stint.
We had a yellow flag flash up, and it was for Giorgio. He's now out of the race. That tunnel section goes under the stand. He just lost it underneath there and buried the McLaren into the wall. And unfortunately, that put him out of the race. So a bad day for Giorgio there, as he's the first retirement of the day.
Unfortunately there for Drajo, and so that is one of the McLarens gone. The other one is in 6th position and is looking at the back end of the Mercedes, Boy Ben and OSB, and M. Doran, he'll be trying to stick with Scott now, and M. Doran on the same amount of lifetime life as Scott's tyres. They head both on 1 lap old hards. We've got a yellow in sector 3, and it's Burmeister out of 9th position. That's really unfortunate for Burmeister, who was really looking forward to this round. Was looking up, picking up another set of decent points, and unfortunately for Burmeister, it looks like contact in sector 3, or it looks like contact with the wall in sector 3 may have ended the Racing Points race.
Speed Queen in second place is now around half a second behind White Fountain. White Fountain is still out there with that damaged front wing. You could tell, riding on board with Speed Queen, you could tell he's really struggling through some of those corners with that damaged front wing now. Speed Queen will be, she's still out there, by the way, on the medium tyre, so she's done well to look after these tyres at the moment. She's trying to put the pressure on White Fountain. You'd imagine those, sooner rather than later, she will be coming in for a set of the hard tyres, but White Fountain now under some pressure for first place.
Yeah, Speed Queen hitting the apex, absolutely pinpoint perfect, corner for corner at the moment, and really putting the pressure on the back of White Fountain. And the Belgian stays out, the Renault driver. He knows that he's on those hard tyres. He needs to try and stay out as long as possible, and possibly look setting on those mediums as late into the race as possible to give himself as much tyre life. As Harry now a 141.2, he's starting to hunt down these guys that are yet to stop. So although that gap between the top two, who have are yet to stop, is at 0.6 of a second, that gap between second and third is coming down rapidly. Harry taking around 1/10 of a second off these guys at almost every corner.
Yeah, Harry's he's got it comfortable, hasn't he? I mean, I don't want to jinx him, but he's looking very good for the race win at the moment. Charlie, 4.6 seconds behind, with Slot 12.5 seconds behind his teammates. So it's been a tough day for Scott. He's still got M. Doran following closely behind, just around a second. So M. Doran keeping him honest, isn't he? But at the moment, I don't think M. Doran's got any penalties. So if it was to stay this close, Scott would drop a place to M. Doran, which he definitely doesn't want. So at some point, Scott is going to try and have to get a move on and try and build a 3-second gap to M. Doran just to cover him off.
Yeah, of course, White Fountain and Scott both sitting on 3-second time penalties there, 4 track extensions earlier in the race. So both of those guys will need to hope to break out a little bit of a gap later in the race if they are to maintain the position they're in, because as you say, although now we've got a yellow in sector 2, we'll see if anyone drops
Nick
down top there. So it's Nick LJ Thompson in 8th position as Adri picks up the fastest lap of the race of 40.6. So currently sitting in 9th position. He would be getting that 1 extra point. As in comes Speed Queen, lap 15 off the medium tyres. Speed Queen in for her pit stop. Where will she come out?
This is going to be interesting, isn't it? She's going to be on fresh rubber now, a lot fresher rubber than some of the earlier medium stops. She's going on to the hard tyre, which we expected. No damage to the front wing. It's a nice pit stop for the Ferrari team there. She's going to be probably coming out as Scott flies past now, as M. Doran flies past now. You'd imagine she'll drop just behind M. Doran as she's just exiting the pit lane now. She will come out just behind M. Doran into 6th place as M. Doran now. As I was just speaking about M. Doran, hot on the tail of Scott on that 3-second time penalty, he's now also picked up the 3-second time penalty. So that'll be great news for Scott if he can't shake off that McLaren. He'll know that M. Doran's going to have to get the move done in order to get the place from Scott.
Yeah, that's slightly pressure alleviated for Scott, sitting in 4th position now, so he knows that he's now essentially on neutral, sitting with M. Doran and himself. So those guys both sitting on 3-second time penalties. Speed Queen is in 6th position now. Fresh tyres, fresh hards to go to the end of the race now. Another 15 laps to do, and 5.2 seconds is the gap between herself and M. Doran. But as we've seen so far this race, catching someone has been pretty easy for her, but overtaking them is taking a little bit of time.
It is. It's really a tough task, isn't it, tonight, for people to get clean moves done. As I'm just looking at White Fountain, he's still going along there with that damaged front wing, and Not far behind now is a very fast racing point in Harry. So White Fountain, I've just been trying to work it out. If Speed Queen can get the hurry on here, I think Speed Queen might be able to join White Fountain, because White Fountain really isn't setting quick lap times now because he's got that damage. So you'd imagine when he does come in, he's going to have a front wing change as well, which will make his pit stop even longer. So you'd imagine White Fountain, who was looking good for a potential podium here, because he was on the alternate strategy, now he's kind of hampered himself, and you could see him dropping down to probably 6th place when he comes in, because at the moment he's just struggling to get the car around each corner. We've got a yellow flag in sector 1. I don't see what that was for.
No, I can't see either. It may have been for Meg Lapierre. Unfortunately, drops the lap there, and Meg will be pretty displeased about this after starting so well, getting a good qualifying position up in 5th position. Unfortunately, looked like he got tagged going into turn 1, so that put him around, and he's now down a lap down in 10th position. So although he'll be picking up a championship point as things stands, I'm sure that he will not be particularly happy about how the race has gone for him. As you're saying about where White Fountain might come out, looking at the gaps between where he is at the moment and Speed Queen, it's currently sitting at 24.5 seconds. So pit stop around here, it can take around 26 seconds, I believe it is. So that would drop White Fountain right down behind Speed Queen. So that will be interesting. We'll see if White Fountain is going to try and stay out, and possibly, I don't know, does he stay out and try and look to go for the soft tyres at the end? But at the moment, it looks like Harry is going to, well, it's a case of when rather than if, because the racing point at the moment is rather being held up by the Renault ahead. Obviously 17 lap old tyres, Harry's on 6 lap old tyres, and he's going to want to clear this Renault very shortly, and I can imagine sitting in the tow of him as we go up the straight through turn 5, turn 6 and into turn 7. Oh, it's so close to contact between the two there, and do they both kind of bail out, with White Fountain running Harry right to the outside line there. Harry's going to try and stay with him, and this is where you'd want to say to Harry that you don't have to fight him that much. He's got to make a pit stop. White Fountain almost collecting the wall there, and they're going to try to go side by side up towards turn 10. This isn't really an overtaking position, but Harry has decided that he's going to make it, so they're still side by side. Harry finally back up into lead, but all out of shape, almost Felipe Massa style there, and got completely sideways, and he's now back up into the lead of the race. White Fountain deciding that he wasn't going to give up the lead of the race, and just about gets it slowed down, doesn't come into contact with the racing point ahead. But that's really allowed Charlie to close in, because the gap was 5 seconds, but it's now only 2.7 between Charlie and Harry.
I think that was, I don't know what you think, but I think that was absolutely crazy from White Fountain, because White Fountain's not in a race with Harry, is he? White Fountain surely should have just let him pass and followed Harry for as long as possible, and picked up potential DRS on Harry to try and keep with that racing point, because now White Fountain has lost so much time. He's definitely going to be dropping behind Speed Queen, and yeah, like you say, he could potentially go onto the soft tyres at the end of the race, but at the moment, all White Fountain is doing is costing himself opportunities at the end of the race here by trying to hold up front-running guys who are not in his race. So at the moment, for me, White Fountain is really frustrating me, because he doesn't need to fight these guys at all, and it's costing him big amounts of time. And for Charlie's sake, he'll be hoping that White Fountain doesn't do the same, because Charlie, like you say, has gained heap loads of time on Harry, and if he can get past this Renault quickly, there's an opportunity there for Charlie to get his skates on and try and catch up with the pink racing point. But White Fountain, he just doesn't want to give up, does he? He wants to be in a fight whenever possible, but I think it's just the wrong time to be fighting these guys when they're clearly not in his race.
No, definitely a little bit of tunnel vision there for White Fountain, as he just thought, I want to fight, I don't want to lose the position, and we'll sit on board with FPL Charlie here, who's looking at the back of him now, and of course Charlie and White Fountain involved in a championship battle at the moment. But as you said, White Fountain's still yet to make a pit stop, so he's not really in a fight, but I can imagine inside the cockpit and the helmet of White Fountain, he's thinking, I don't want to let him past. I don't want to give my championship challenger or anyone that might potentially stop me from picking up more points any sort of advantage with possibly chasing down Harry. So it might even be to the advantage of White Fountain to have held up Charlie, but he has decided that this lap is the lap he comes in. So that does release Harry. Releases Charlie, sorry, to chase after Harry, but that gap now moved up to 2.9 seconds. So you can see how much time Charlie lost there, because he'd taken it down to about two seconds. He lost around about a second sitting behind White Fountain. White Fountain, as we said, it's a new front wing, so it's going to be an even longer stop for him as well. So he's going to come out probably just ahead of MJ Coupe, and MJ Coupe running around on old mediums as well, because after making an early stop, so MJ Coupe looking at doing the 2-stop, he's going to come out just about behind White Fountain. Stopped on the apex there, on the exit of the pit lane. That's very strange, and but yeah, that almost caught MJ Coupe out there, but MJ Coupe now up into 6th position, so White Fountain having an issue on the exit of the pit lane, and we'll see if he's managed to get back up to speed. He has, but yeah, almost like he lost power, lost drive on the exit of the pit lane, and was just parked on the apex of turn 1, and luckily for the quick reflexes of MJ Coupe, manages to miss the Renault, and Coupe now on to 6th position as Meg picks up 3 seconds. We got a yellow, and it's Adri Lockdock who's pointing the wrong direction there, and is he going to be able to get it turned around in time without losing any front wing? Just about. I think he's chipped off a little bit of front wing and chipped off the rest of it there. He could just leave it to the side, but luckily for him, he is right at the pit entry, so Adri will be able to come into the box now, but it's unfortunately it's not the race that Adri had last week.
No, unfortunately not, as he now retires. What about this first scenario? Speed Queen, she doesn't have any time penalties at the moment, and she's fast approaching M. Doran, and boy better know, she's just 2.3 seconds behind M. Doran. M. Doran just over a second behind Scott. So if Speed Queen can get up to the back of M. Doran, challenge M. Doran, she could potentially be in for a fight for a podium place tonight, and steal 3rd place from Scott, because at the moment she's running a nice clean race. She's bringing that gap down. It's down to 2 seconds now behind the McLaren. She can see right on board. She can see both M. Doran and Scott in the distance. So all to play for here for Speed Queen in the Friday. There is a definite potential here for a podium place for her.
Mercedes, McLaren and Ferrari all in the same shot as we see these guys fighting over what you say is a podium position, with Boy Better Know currently occupying that 3rd place. We've got Charlie, who's around 2.5 seconds behind Harry in the lead of the race at the moment. But yeah, Speed Queen down to 2 seconds between himself and M. Doran, but more importantly, 3 laps advantage on tyre life. So this is where that first strategy of starting on the fresh tyres may come back to her, especially with possibly in the next 6 or 7 laps, when the guys ahead start to struggle on those tyres. And yeah, it's might just be a little bit of a long game scenario for Speed Queen here, who can just sit behind them and just bide her time, knowing that those guys ahead will start to struggle with their tyres in around about 5 to 10 minutes time.
Exactly, and the experience of Speed Queen, she'll know that these guys ahead have got time penalties. She doesn't need to make any rash moves on them once she catches them up, which you'd imagine in a few laps' time she's going to. She's down to 1.7 seconds now behind M. Doran, as M. Doran is under a second to Scott, so he will be picking up a DRS on the Mercedes shortly. So yeah, Speed Queen just plays it clever here and keeps that gap under 3 seconds to Scott. She has got a nailed on 3rd place here. So definitely opportunity here. Speed Queen definitely looking the fastest racer out there at the moment, as M. Doran now is trying to reel in Scott, just a bit too far away with the DRS, and Scott survives so far for another lap. But at the moment, I'd say Scott just doesn't have an answer for either M. Doran or Speed Queen behind. Scott just doesn't seem to have the pace tonight, and unfortunately he's going to be falling back into the clutches of M. Doran and Speed Queen very shortly.
Yeah, Scott in real danger of dropping down to 5th position if M. Dawn can get past, and equally if Speed Queen, even if she doesn't get past, she will overtake them on the penalties. But he is currently under threat from that McLaren behind, who is well within DRS range, and the Irishman, M. Doran, sitting behind, just waiting for Scott to make mistakes, knowing that Scott really started to struggle early in the end of the first stint and really dropped back, so Scott possibly having to be a little bit more cautious this stint to look after those tyres. And we see now the gap half a second between M. Doran and Scott, as Scott loses even more time. They're going into the tunnel at turn 18 and turn 19. It's now only just under, or say as it's just gone over, half a second between the two now, so it's all about who gets a good launch out this final corner. And you can see there M. Doran, DRS wide open, but he's not quite close enough. We've only seen Speed Queen manage to get an overtake done into turn 1 so far this race, and you can see there he's much closer now. 3.5 tenths cover third and fourth position. Can he get himself tucked in nicely into the toe, as Scott, as I said, once again losing the rear end of that Mercedes, and that's going to give M. Doran a perfect opportunity to get right into the slipstream. He's going to weave side to side, and at the last minute bails out of that overtake, and probably just realised he wasn't quite close enough, and you could see wasn't sure what move to make this. He was putting it left, putting it right, and once again then decided to switch back once again to the inside line, but bailed out of that overtake. But what it has done is that's really compromised his exit speed and allowed Speed Queen to close right up to the back of him.
Well, we've got a real good battle on hands now, haven't we? Scott, he's under immense pressure. I thought M. Doran would have tried to sell one, as he nearly kisses the back of M. Doran nearly kisses the back of that Mercedes there. He's going to put more pressure on Scott now. Can he get the move done? This time he's going to try around the outside. Scott should have him covered down the inside, but yeah, this is going to be fascinating to watch, isn't it, for the last few... Oh, as M. Doran's tagged that Mercedes. I don't know, he picked up damage, but he just seemed to Scott caught him unawares a bit there, and M. Doran nearly wiped out the Mercedes there, and Speed Queen now also under pressure. And we've also got a lapped Meg Luppy on the back of this train as well. He'll obviously not want to be getting involved as M. Doran pits. Has M. Doran pitted? Yeah, M. Doran's pitted, so he must have picked up damage. That is bad luck for M. Doran. That really is bad luck for M. Doran. You'd imagine he'd be coming in for the soft tyres now, so that contact there was significant, unfortunately for M. Doran. He comes into the pit lane, now comes in for a new front wing, a set of medium tyres, and now Speed Queen, who's dropped a bit back to Scott at 1.2 seconds, but like we said, Speed Queen just has to stay on the tail of Scott, and she knows she's got third place in the bag, but that's desperately unlucky for M. Doran.
Yeah, but it worked perfectly into the hands of Speed Queen. She didn't even need to try and get past M. Doran. Unfortunately, just letting those two get into a little bit of a mix-up as M. Doran ran into the back of Scott coming in towards turn 16, I believe it was, and yeah, that's allowed Speed Queen up into fourth position. So she looks like, if all goes her way, it might be a position starting outside of top 10 that she's managed to find herself onto the podium with 7 laps left to go in the race. Harry currently leading by 2.2 seconds, and we've got a gap between Charlie and Scott at, well, 16.5 seconds. So you can see just how much Scott has lost with this battle between himself and M. Doran and Speed Queen, and equally the fact that he just doesn't seem to be enjoying the track tonight. He's not enjoying the setup, and he was a little bit worried with his teammates' pace earlier in the week, and thinking that he might possibly be the one that loses out tonight. And if all things continue as they are, it looks like he is, and Charlie will be extending that lead at the top of the championship stable.
Yeah, Charlie, he's going down to 2 seconds now, hasn't he? But it's just, he just needs to keep it clean. He knows he's finishing ahead of all his rivals, so like you say, extend the lead at the championship. Here's a question for you: if you was M. Doran and you'd come in then, would you have chucked on a set of soft tyres and gone for the fastest lap? He was comfortably going to be coming back out ahead of MJ Coupe, so there's an opportunity there, I think, for him to try and go and get that fastest lap. He's not obviously going to catch up with Speed Queen now, so it's a bit surprising he jumped on to another set of mediums. Me personally, I'd have chucked on a set of softs, tried to get the fastest lap point, and gained a point there with 5th place. It would have been small consolation, but at least something back from that small mistake.
Yeah, we've got a yellow in sector 1. It's flashed up twice there, so possibly a car that's either slow or pointing in towards the barriers, which we've seen a few do this evening. Unfortunately, Burmeister and Adri picking up damage after collecting the wall, and Adri retiring from the race a little bit earlier on, and it's unfortunate for him after a great race in Bahrain that he wasn't able to continue that form into Singapore, but we know that these sort of street tracks are unforgiving and they do not take any prisoners. And unfortunately for him, he was one of those ones that came off on the losing side as White Fountain, 2.4 seconds behind MJ Coop. And Coop did very nicely up in 6th position. We haven't quite highlighted his move up through the field, and so he'll be happy in the Red Bull picking up a top 6 at the moment, and see if he can hold off White Fountain, who'll be charging behind. And yeah, you said M. Doran coming in, setting the mediums. He gets fresh mediums to take him to the end. Possibly thought that his tyre pressures on softs would have worn them out by the end of the race, and didn't want to have a car that was oversteery or losing the rear end, because we've seen how much time that Scott has lost when on tyres that seem to be going off, and so possibly M. Doran thinking that he'll just play it safe, put a set of the mediums on. He's got a gap between himself and MJ Coop, and he could just go out there and just put some qualifying laps in as Speed Queen. There's another 3 seconds for White Fountain and for M. Doran there, so those two, luckily, well, that might have actually cost White Fountain's 6th position, depending on if he can get past MJ Coop or not, but it's not going to cost M. Doran anything at the moment. He's in a little bit of a race on his own, but we've got a really nice battle with Speed Queen and Boy Better Know for the last step on the podium. And Sab, how many times have we seen these two go up against each other, and we always get absolutely amazing results?
Oh, we do. It's a real treat when we see these two battling. Unfortunately, he's just not enjoying tonight, is he? The car steps out slightly again for him in that Mercedes Speed Queen. You'd imagine just playing it safe, playing it clever. She knows when to strike on that Mercedes. Don't do anything silly through these sort of corners. There's no opportunity to overtake here. Just keep him in front, wait for the DRS, I'd say, and then try and make you move them. But yeah, like you say, we've had some superb battles through these. Unfortunately, like I say, Scott's just struggling tonight. We may not see the battle what we all hope to see, as Scott again struggling through turn 1. Speed Queen clearly has the better traction there through turn 1 through turn 2, and imagine any moment now Speed Queen will be attacking and using that DRS to full advantage.
Yeah, this might be elementary, and Speed Queen now, DRS wide open, chasing down the rear end of Scott, as she's going to have to go to the outside because Scott's covered off the inside. She's going to look to go around the outside. Scott cuts her off, swings to the outside line, and he just about holds position there. So Speed Queen having to reset and just think about where else on track she can make a surprise attack, possibly try and catch out the Mercedes driver ahead. But I'm sure she'll be aware that Scott is equally sitting on that penalty slapped on him by the stewards for a little bit of track extension, which I find you usually pick up on that last kink at turn 23, running over the curbs, trying to finish the lap as fast as possible. But Speed Queen now 4/5 of a second behind. Possibly just save a little bit of battery there. You can see the red light blinking on the Mercedes head as he's trying to save up as much as possible into the heavy braking zones to try and launch himself down these main straights to cover off the power of that Ferrari behind.
This is going to be uncomfortable, isn't it, for Scott? I do not envy him whatsoever. A very angry, I would say, Speed Queen. She had that incident, didn't she? You thought it might have cost her good points tonight, but she recovered well. She didn't pick up any damage, and now looks set to be clinching at a 3rd place. She's had a superb race so far, hasn't she? She's gone up from the back row of the grid to challenge for 3rd place. This is the Speed Queen we all love watching and commentating and watching live on streams of. She's really in her zone tonight, like we all love. She's going to try again now through the first DRS section. Can she get the move done now? She's really on the tail. She just gets a slight bit of oversteer there, but Scott's now going to be under increased pressure again. He's going to tuck on the inside once again, make Speed Queen go round the outside. Scott defending once again the slightly touched wheels, but Yeah, Scott nearly caught Speed Queen out there. Scott breaking a little bit earlier than probably Speed Queen expected, and Speed Queen just about didn't touch that Mercedes, and Scott once again defending nicely down from the turn from the first DRS zone.
Yeah, you could put a cigarette paper in between the nose cone of that Ferrari and the rear diffuser of the Mercedes ahead. That was that close there as she managed to get right up behind, and yeah, it's not proving an easy job for her to get past. Scott once again providing some excellent defensive work that we've seen these two in several races over the past few seasons. It harkbacks to Italy 2 seasons ago and Australia last season, where these two had titanic battles of each other. So yeah, they are always absolute top class to watch, and Scott making that Mercedes pretty much 3 or 4 cars wide at the moment and not allowing Speed Queen any opportunity to get up the inside. But we've only got 3 laps left to go. Can Speed Queen, who is of course breaking the record for the most consecutive starts in the no assist championship, going on to her 34th start, her 57th race in no assists, and will she manage to mark it with a podium, her first since Australia and only her 2nd of the season?
She's trying her hardest, isn't she? I just want to point out as well, FPL Charlie had got the time down to 1.5 seconds to Harry. Now, is there going to be a late charge, or is Harry just saving some time? I don't know. As the time, as I point out, time starts creeping back up towards 2 seconds. Maybe Harry just having an off lap there. But Charlie was trying to keep Harry honest, but at the moment it's still hovering around the 2-second mark.
White Fountain and MJ Coupe fighting over 6th and 7th at the moment. In fact, it's very close between the two. White Fountain, they're running over the line very close, but he's really pushing MJ Coupe. In fact, he's really pushing him. They're almost pushing the rear end of that Red Bull around turn 3 and turn 4. He's going to go up the inside and get DRS going up the main straight as those two look like they're going to swap positions up towards turn 5. MJ Coupe's going to try and come back at him. Looks like the position is done, but White Fountain sitting on some penalties. So we'll go back to Speed Queen and Scott, who are still fighting over a podium. And Sab, what does Speed Queen do here? She probably knows that Scott's on that penalty. Will she want to pass him on track, or is she quite happy sitting in this position here and just coming across the line and doing it, knowing that she may not have got it on the track, but she will have got him on penalties?
The racer in you always wants to get the overtake done. You don't really ever want to win it based on penalties, do you? Speed Queen, I'd imagine, as we got yellow flag in sector 1, Speed Queen, I'd imagine, will want to get the move done, but she just needs to play it sensible now, does she? There's a couple of laps left now. Speed Queen has this in the bag, really. As long as she keeps it on track, she keeps it out of the wall, she doesn't pick up any penalties, she's got Scott in her sights comfortably. I don't think she's going to be able to get the move done this time. She's a bit too far off the back of that Mercedes this time. I think with just a couple of laps to go, for me, I would just start to play it safe. If I knew Scott would have a penalty, just play it safe. You've got a 19-second gap behind you. There's no pressure of anybody challenging you from behind. So as long as she keeps within that 3 seconds of Scott, she's nailed on for 3rd place. But like I say, the racer in everybody always wants to get the move done, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a lap and a half left to go. Harry leading by just under 1.5 seconds, and Charlie just eking that gap down and down and down as he has been, but it's only been by fractions of a second each lap. So he's not quite close enough to get a last lap challenge. He's 1.3 seconds down, 1.2, so he's taken 1/10 of a second out of Harry. Of course, Harry on 1 lap older tyres, so Charlie may have that slight advantage. In fact, it's now down to 1.1 as they come onto the last lap of the race. Will he be able to get into DRS as we go into the final lap? And it's down across the line, and Charlie sitting right behind Harry, and it's now, look at that, it's just bouncing around the 1 second mark. Can Charlie get a good launch out of turn 3 and 4 to get within DRS? It looks like he's going to miss out by 25 hundredths of a second, which means he's going to be frustratingly having to sit behind the racing point down this straight, knowing that DRS would have got him that little bit closer, that might have been able to help him challenge. So It is all about preservation here for Harry. He just needs to keep it out of the wall, keep it clean, don't pick up any silly penalties. We've seen people pick up penalties on the last lap of races that have ruined those races and dropped them out of the wins, out of the contention for the podium. So Charlie now 9/10 of a second behind Harry, and it looks like the championship leader might have to settle for second, but I'm sure he'll be delighted to know that his teammate and championship rival is looking like he's going to drop off the podium.
Yeah, that's crucial, isn't it? Speaking just 0.2 of a second now behind Scott, but unfortunately she's at a part of the circuit at the minute where there's not really an opportunity to overtake. She just needs to keep it tidy now, and she will be guaranteed a third place, as we got a yellow flag in sector 1. I'm not sure what for, but yeah, it's close, isn't it, for third and fourth and first and second, but unfortunately we're just running out of laps now, aren't we?
Well, we're not even running out of laps, we're running out of corners, because here comes Harry. He's going to take the win by just a blink of an eye. Here he comes across the line. Harry is going to take the win. The fireworks go off. He comes across the line, takes the win by 0.3 of a second ahead of Charlie. Within this amazing battle between third and fourth is going to come to a head and come to a finish in with Scott unfortunately dropping off the podium, and he's losing the back end, and Speed Queen's going to try and go to the inside. They're going to come across the line even closer, and she does get up onto the podium. Frustratingly for Scott, that penalty drops him down to fourth position. M. Doran, who will be bemoaning that contact that he had with Scott, is in fifth, and but it's another decent haul of points for the Irishman. White Fountain there is coming in sixth position. In fact, he's going to hold sixth because MJ Coop looks like he boxed on the last lap and he's going for a fastest lap point, although he probably would have stayed ahead of White Fountain if he'd stayed behind him, because White Fountain of course is sitting on a couple of penalties himself. But the Belgian, unfortunately for him, that wing damage earlier in the race really cost him. Started on the hard tyres after not being able to improve, and in fact he loses it out of the final corner and hits the wall. And I don't think he's crossed the start-finish line. So White Fountain is going to retire from the race with, what's that, 3-4 metres before the line? And how does... I mean, that has completely blown the championship possibly out of the water for him, because he needs the points to stay with Scott and Charlie. Wow.
I can't believe that. I cannot believe that, and I don't think MJ Coop even expected a Renault to be sat there a few metres from the finish line. That is, like you say, it's massively cost White Fountain there. I don't know what on earth happened. I just seen him spin and hit the wall, so disaster right at the end there for White Fountain.
Well, my mouth, my jaw was on the floor as that happened there. I could not believe that with such a gap between himself that he was even pushing, and whether that was just out of frustration or he took his eye off the ball for the final corner and just thought that the car would turn in. But yeah, that could be huge in the championship for White Fountain, who on 77 points will be getting 0, with Charlie extending his championship lead over Scott by a decent margin there. Charlie goes into the final 2 races of the season with a healthy championship lead, and there you go. The final results has Harry winning his 2 races out of the last 3, so Harry really setting himself up for next season for a championship challenge there. He takes the win ahead of Charlie by 0.3 of a second. Speed Queen, fantastic result for her in third position after starting in 11th, with Boy Benino dropping down to fourth after finishing third on track. M. Doran in fifth, with MJ Coop promoted up to sixth position. White Fountain retires from the race in 7th position because Nico J. Thompson and Meg Lugby were both a lap down in 8th and 9th. So we'll look to see. I imagine that those two will be bumped up to 8th and 9th. And yeah, unfortunately, we lost White Fountain, Adri, Burmeister, and Dragio earlier in the race. And take a breath. Let's relax a little bit. Let's take stock from that race, because a fantastic result from Harry there. Controlled the race, got to the front of the first corner, and just controlled it from there.
Yeah, he like you say, if he was in the championship this season, he would be one of the favourites, wouldn't he? Won the 2 out of the 3 first races in this league. He is looking mighty. Definitely got pushed at the end by his good friend Charlie. But yeah, superb race from Harry. Huge congratulations to him. But huge race as well for Charlie. He's finished ahead of all his championship rivals, and with 2 races to go, he's looking very healthy now for a push for his first championship in this league.
Yeah, massive result there for the Mercedes, equally as they pick up some more decent championship points for the Constructors' Championship. And we'll await to see Harry and Charlie joining us in here for the podium interviews, find out what the top 2 were thinking. I believe, unfortunately speaking, won't be able to join us this evening, but we will get the race winner and the championship leader joining us and find out what their thoughts were for the evening, how the race went for them. And just as they join, I will just remind you guys that this isn't the only racing we do here at Invictus. Over the week, of course, on F1 2019, we have the No Assist Championship here on Mondays with Sab and I in the commentary box. Tuesday night is our Realistic Performance League. And on Wednesday night, we have 3 equal performance leagues, F1, F2 and F3. So plenty of action across the week for you to get your teeth sunk into with F1 2019. And then, of course, on Thursday nights is the F1 podcast with Sab and I, and talking all things Formula One. And equally, you have the GT Sport DTM League, who have just finished off their season, so they will be going again in a few weeks' time for a brand new season. So if you want to get yourself on the grid for F1 2019 as we come towards the end of this season for the second season here on F1 2019, go to the website invictusracingleague.com and go to the sign up page. But the top two have joined us. Harry, Charlie, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll start off with the race winner, Harry. You took the lead at the start and controlled it from the front. It got a little bit close to the back end of that race. Were you a little bit worried with Charlie chasing you down with a few laps left to go?
To be honest, I was bricking it. I think more than worried. I think I always knew Charlie was quicker on the hard tyres, and from as soon as the gap got to around 2 seconds, he was just gaining. I had a few laps where I managed to pull it back to 2.2, and then the last few laps was a nightmare. Both of us had 2 warnings, so obviously one more corner count, we'd both get a penalty. So it was the most tense race to finish I think I've had in this game.
So it was a great result from you. What was the thought going in? Was it just to you said earlier in the pre-race interviews that you don't have any pressure on you for the end of the season. You know that Charlie can't take any risks, and was it just to get to the front and hold him behind, or were you happy? Were you happy in this fight? Were you happy to kind of just possibly play a little bit of mind games between yourself and Charlie?
Well, I don't know about any mind games. I mean, I think turn 1 was quite aggressive. I knew I had done quite a bit of practice with Charlie, and I knew he was very, very quick. Again, especially on the hard tyre, so I knew if I had a chance at turn 1, I got a really good start, so I just thought, I'm going for it. It was quite close, and then the first stint was very good. I think obviously, as you said, Charlie's also going for the championship, and he's gained points on the people he's racing, so but I'm sure Charlie's very happy with second place.
Yeah, moving on to Charlie, and congratulations, mate, another podium for yourself. And that stretches your lead over Scott, who dropped off of the podium after penalties. So you've got to be happy with that. You may not have taken the race win, but you've got to be happy with extending that lead.
Yeah, happy with that. When I look at the points, the gap's only got bigger, so I can't really complain, to be honest.
And obviously started well, lost the lead at the first corner. How did you feel? Was it a case of just resetting and just going after Harry, or was it all about keeping Scott behind you?
I knew that Scott's pace wasn't great at this track, so I wasn't particularly worried about Scott. The first couple of laps he was there or thereabouts, but I knew that I'll probably be more consistent than him because of his lack of practice. So at first I kind of wanted to race Harry, and I was like, I was going down that next track, I was thinking, I'm going to have you soon. But then I actually started thinking, I thought, what's the point? We both just need to pull away. We got Fountain on the alternate strategy, and he got a good start. So I knew that we just needed to get away instead of Scobble. And it turns out that I didn't have the pace on the mediums to attack Harry anyway. So, I wasn't really thinking about people behind too much. But
Well, it's another great result from you. It's another decent haul of points that stretches your lead in the championship, stretches lead in the constructors equally. So I'm sure, although Scott will be bemoaning that penalty dropping him off the podium, it does get you some constructors points, which both of you will be happy about. But just going back to Harry quickly, you came up to the back end of White Fountain in the race. White Fountain had yet to make a stop. Were you surprised that he fought you so much on those old tyres when you were on the fresh rubber?
Very surprised, yeah. Very, very surprised. I think obviously when you're fighting for the leads, I expect him to defend, but I think on the street circuit when it's not really for the lead, he's like the whole pit stop behind. Fair enough. I think it was clean. It was on the limit, but it's quite a stressful moment because I think both of us were probably millimeters from the walls, and it was also over a race where we wasn't in the same race. So, but I knew I had to be a bit aggressive because Charlie was very quick, so I couldn't afford to lose too much time. And it took me a few laps to get back my rhythm after passing him. But at the end of the day, it's good race, and I think it's a good fight.
Well, it's 2 wins out of 3 for you, so it's a fantastic start to your time here at Invictus. And final question, we've got Canada next up, so almost another street circuit and the famous Wall of Champions. Is it a track you're looking forward to? And it's definitely one of those ones where overtaking is a little bit easier than we see this evening. So what's the plans for the next week's race? Is it just getting on the on TT practice over the week, or are you quite comfortable with Canada?
Well, I don't do too much time trial anyway. I think myself, Charlie and Scott, our pace is usually quite similar. It usually just depends on who's practiced more for the race. So I do quite like Canada, but I think it'll also be about trying to find a setup and just getting comfortable with the race strategy. So, but I think I'll be more competitive there, hopefully, I think.
Well, congratulations, boys. Fantastic result for you both. And equally, congratulations go to Speed Queen, who finished in 3rd position after starting 11th. Fantastic race for her, starting on the fresh tyres, managed to fight her way through the fun. And even after that spin after contact with Doran, came back and just managed to pip Scott on penalties at the end of the race. So had another fantastic race here in No Assists on Monday nights. And as I said, it's not the only thing we do here in Invictus. We've got the Realistic Performance League tomorrow night with Malc and Tim in the commentary box. And on Wednesday night, the Equal Performance Leagues F1, F2 and F3. So plenty more racing here on the Invictus Racing League YouTube channel for you to watch. So we go live at 8 p.m. every night, Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. And then equally, the F1 podcast on a Thursday night, streamed live here on YouTube, but it gets uploaded to SoundCloud, Spotify, and iTunes. So make sure you catch that back on all of your podcasting apps. And of course, if you'd like to go to any of the socials, find out more about the league, it's at Invictus IRL on Twitter and Instagram. Invictus Racing League. .com for the website, and of course Invictus Racing League on Facebook, where you can find photo albums from the races and plenty of race recaps done by some members of our wonderful community. So congratulations to the guys for the result tonight. Sab, as we just finish it up, what do you take away from that one? It was another great result from Harry. That's another really decent race from him, but it's Charlie that stretches his lead in the championship.
It could prove crucial, couldn't it, Charlie, extending the lead in the championship. White Fountain as well, crashing out at the end, which still amazed me. That's probably took him out of the chance of really challenging for the championship. Scott's obviously going to want to be fighting back after unfortunately dropping out of the podium places, but I have to say, isn't it great to watch a fighting hard Speed Queen once again around this track. She had that spin like you pointed out, but still managed to fight her way back and pick up that podium place at the end. But it's going to be really, I like to say, it's going to be really interesting next season, because Harry has won 2 of the 3 races. If he keeps this sort of form up next season, it's going to be an even closer battle for the championship with even more people involved. So it's all to look forward to for the remaining few races and into the next season.
Absolutely. And we're going over to Montreal, Canada for next week's race, and by the sounds of it, it's going to unfortunately just be myself in the commentary box next week, with Sab leaving me for the week, so I'll have to talk to you on my own for an hour and a half. So hopefully you all can deal with that one. But hopefully you enjoyed the race tonight with Sab and I, and you join us once again on Thursdays for the podcast streaming live on YouTube, and equally come back next Monday for the race, round 11, the penultimate race of the season in Montreal, as we look to see if Charlie can hone in on that championship victory and his debut season here in Invictus. So it's going to be a tense and nervy penultimate race, and could potentially win the championship if points go his way. So make sure you check that one out. Make sure you check out the rest of the races this week for the Realistic Performance League tomorrow night with Tim and Malc. And then, of course, equal performance on Wednesday nights. F1 with Tim, F2 with Dan, and F3 with Malc in the commentary boxes live here on YouTube at 8 p.m. But for tonight, from Sab and I, from Singapore, we hope you enjoyed the race. We hope you enjoyed everything we brought you, and that these guys gave you a fantastic show. Once again, we will see you in a week's time, and have a great week, guys. We'll see you soon. Good night.